Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Llewellyn from NetworkPharma TV, and this is one of my unscripted conversations, as I like to call it, where I get to chat to folks who I think have something interesting to share with us. So let's see what we're going to learn today. A couple of weeks ago, some context, I attended the Human Edge event in London. The headline was AI content delivery. It was organised by Nick and Raks, who are joining me today to reflect on that meeting and the sort of key themes that came out of it. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I suggest we start with some introductions. Then, Raks, can you go first? Who are you? Where are you? And how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. And thank you very much for coming to the event and giving us the opportunity to be on Network Pharma TV as well. So Rakesh or Raks Kantaria started life out as a hospital pharmacist and then went into the industry about 25 years ago, worked at various different pharmaceutical companies in medical affairs, UK, regional or global. And then about 9 years ago, started Circuit Medical. And so that's where I am now. So founder and CEO of Circuit Medical, which is a global medical affairs and digital AI consultancy. We started out on the global medical affairs side. And really, the thought there was to continue what I was doing within pharma, but on a very different scale, operating independently and growing from there. And we get involved in the breadth of medical affairs activities. So we work across launches, we provide transformational services, launch frameworks, evidence generation. We get involved in operational activities, so we get involved in studies themselves, compassionate use programs, care well services. If it's in the breadth of medical affairs and the diversity of medical affairs, we're typically involved in it. We're also part of the MAP, so the Medical Affairs Professional Society, and we share our learnings and hopefully help the whole community grow as well at the same time. And about 3 years ago, started having conversations around AI. And really what prompted those discussions was a lot of discussions with colleagues who wanted to do more of what we were talking about and what we focus on as an agency. However, they felt really constrained by a lot of their operational and administrative activities, which really were getting in the way of them being able to do maybe some of the things which they really wanted to do more of. For example, interact more with investigators, with key opinion leaders, HCPs, the patient community to really to bring more innovative medicines to real world practice and actually to help the understanding of those medicines in practice and to be able to do more with that. So inspired by a book that I read as well, I started to look at AI and really started to look to see what we could do from an AI perspective to help folk reduce their administrative burden so that they could do more of what actually they're skilled to do, what they're more trained to do, and what they actually want to do. And to liberate them and their time. And that began the AI journey, like I said, about 3 years ago, which has been really a magical journey, I would say. Learned a hell of a lot. Things have changed and things still are changing, I would say, at a pace which is unprecedented. And last year we launched our first digital product, so Beacon, which is an AI MLR product. We've launched our second product as well, which is Ask Beacon. And in that time, again, we've learned a lot about introducing AI products into the pharmaceutical industry. And that sort of brought us to where we are here today, which is we wanted to do an event to share some of our learnings, to actually share how to work successfully with specialist AI tools. Have been in discussions with Nick for a little while, and Nick had similar ideas about doing something around ethics and AI. And so we thought, why don't we just combine our heads and actually do something together? So that was, if you like, sort of what brings us here today and the Human Edge event, which you were at a couple of weeks ago.
Excellent, thanks. I'm going to put you on the spot, possibly. Can you remember what's this book that inspired you?
Ah, even better.
Oh,
I have
I
it
have
in
to
my
find it now.
bookshelf. So it's
Art.
artificial intelligence basics,
Okay.
and happy to share. Happy to share the. As you can tell, probably so well read. The pages, in fact, are falling out. It's actually, I was going to say, as with all books these days, and somebody who's prehistoric like me, who still reads books, they are quickly outdated, especially when it comes to AI. However, what I would say also with books is that a lot of principles and fundamentals don't change, and actually, it's a fantastic book for learning some of
Okay.
those fundamental principles.
Okay, brilliant. Well, there's a plug for that book. Nick, over to you. Same question, basically. Who are you? Where are you? What brought you to where you are?
Hi, yes. Thanks, Peter. I'm Dr. Nick Broughton. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry myself for well over 25 years, similar sort of time to Raks. I was a GP way back a long time ago. Within the industry, I've worked in clinical research initially. I've also spent a lot of time in medical affairs and in also done some regulatory affairs work. So I worked in big pharma and small pharma in a variety of jobs, including sort of regional and national, medical director roles. But a little while back, I sort of started to follow my first love, which I suppose was in terms of business, if you like, in terms of ethics and compliance. I've always had an interest in that. I find it fascinating, the relationship between ethics and compliance and thinking about those as two different concepts. And about 6 years ago, I established an agency called Ethos, Pharmaceutical Ethics and Compliance, which is specializing in providing education about not just compliance with ABPI code. We do that in terms of signatory education, reviewer education, and courses to deliver that and get people to a high level of understanding, but also about wider understanding of ethics and pharmaceutical ethics as a concept. Now, with the advent of generative AI in particular, that seemed to me a sort of fascinating area to investigate ethically, because it really does sort of bring into question, what it is to be human, and ethics and morality and beliefs and behaviors of humans that are considered moral behaviors and areas of. It's about very deep-rooted behaviors, essentially crafted by evolution, and how these ancient behaviors and patterns of behavior interact with this modern technology, to me, is an area that is fascinating. So just for that, I'm sort of into it. But then I'm thinking, particularly within pharma, how that interplay is going to play out. And I'm doing some work with a lady called Shuli Porkes, who's president of the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine, and we're doing some work together on the specifics of how AI will play out in pharma. Not AI training, not how does AI work, but how the human aspect of it, the ethical aspects, the behavioral aspects. And so that's what sort of led me into had a discussion with Raks, and as he said, we felt we had complementary things to talk about, let's say, and that's what led to the Human Edge event.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think that's what I found interesting. I mean, the meeting was AI content delivery, yeah. But what was most interesting to me at that meeting was your themes of ethics and human interaction and so on, and that came out from all the presentations really. And indeed, some of your presentations were well beyond the scope of AI content delivery. We started with some quite interesting conversations about just how AI is being used in the NHS, didn't we?
Yeah.
So again, just lead us through a little bit like that. And I as I say, I find the ethics side of it really interesting, and the title was great, The Human Edge, which sort of said it all. But it wasn't just about managing content in medical legal terms. There was that wider context, which I'd just like to explore a little bit more. But talk a little bit about how we started. I mean, we heard from Sam up in was it Glasgow he comes from, and talking about using AI in the NHS and so on. Just talk us a little bit about that wider question that was addressed.
Yeah. So shall I take that one? Because yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
sorry,
so yeah, because I so that the thinking behind all of that really was also why we wanted people to engage with this meeting in the first place, and why we called it the Human Edge. Because when working with AI, there's a lot of there's a lot of thinking that goes around it, and you know, I think I started the day off with that. With, you know, you could be completely excited. You might be thinking to yourself, "Oh, just go away. I've had enough of AI today." All the way through to, is AI going to replace us? And that's not only in terms of our jobs, but is it going to replace us as the supreme species, if you like? You know, that's the way that you're looking at things. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there as well about working with AI. And so what we wanted to do really was to be able to show how AI is actually making a practical difference today. And that's the reason why I invited speakers like Sam and Arpit and Monique, was because I'd seen them previously and talk about their experiences of working with AI in a healthcare setting. And so they were really able to bring their experiences and learnings about actually how is AI used today to help them in terms of their jobs, and what problems are they facing, which are very similar, I would say, to the challenges and the problems that are faced by pharma. For example, you know, Arpit, I think, spoke about this, where 60% of GPs are overburdened by the administrative burden, and there's a huge risk of burnout. And I'm certainly not drawing the analogy which is the same in the pharma industry, because I think the pressures are very different. But there are similarities with regards to the administrative burden not being helpful in anyone's role. And actually, if there's a better way of being able to do that, as well as with Sam, who was able to highlight that the NHS is absolutely on its knees. I think anybody who has had to interact with the NHS recently, blessed service, I think we all love it, but we all realise that it needs more help. And he was able to bring in really his work that he's doing in Glasgow around AI, and help with diagnosis, help with access to services through the innovation hub that they have, and the innovation lab as well, and really show how it is being used in practice, and to maybe break away some of those myths which are held about the use of AI in pharma as well. Because I think, yeah, we've had, like I say, we've had so many discussions over the last year where we've been talking about AI beacon, etc. And there are still a lot of companies where I would say there's quite a cautious attitude towards the use of AI. And you know, that leads to other things as well, like shadow AI usage. But really what we wanted to be able to show was that AI is being used now, today, successfully, not without its challenges. So we actually asked the speakers to bring out some of the challenges that they're working with, to show that we're not in this alone, but actually everybody's dealing with really similar sorts of challenges, and they can be overcome. And so really when you're, and I guess the other thing as well is that when we refer to AI, we talk about it as though it's the same, it's the singular, it's the one and the same thing, just in the same way that we talk about humans, we're not. So I think that's also something that we need to address as we move forward, is that we get a little bit more sophisticated in the way that we talk about AI. I think it's part of AI literacy. And we talk about actually the different types of AI as we start to become more familiar with the different types of AI, and show how actually the different types of AI can be used to solve different challenges, working together as the user who's operating the AI along with the AI itself, and what benefits that gives, but equally at the same time, what challenges still remain. I think that's really important as well. So that was the thinking behind Sam and Arpit really in the morning, really. It was, and Monique obviously in the morning, just to sort of talk about actually how is AI actually being used outside of the pharma setting, and what can we learn from that? Because that's probably the most sensitive area that you could use AI, which is with patients' health data. And it really does go to show that it can be used, obviously with the appropriate guardrails in place, but it can be used and used quite successfully. From there, we wanted to move on to more that content generation piece, which is where we were working with Will and with Emma as well. And there, I mean, again, really interesting insights, because with Will, we were able to really address some of the myths that do exist with working with AI and introducing specialist AI products into organizations. For example, this sort of almost panacea that AI will solve everything. It will be 100% accurate, and it will lead to the removal of the workforce and or deployment of the workforce elsewhere, and it's going to be this one singular thing. And actually, the reality is very different, right? We're still in a learning phase, but we do have the ability to use really powerful AI products, and they have to be introduced into organizations, obviously, to see how that works. And it is something which can be done at a local and a global level. So Will, I think, really covered that nicely, because he addressed a lot of the myths around actually what does that mean in practice. And you know, he did it from his position as head of marketing in the UK for Roche. And then Emma, I think, did it from a local as well as global perspective. And I think really nicely brought out the different types of AI products that are available for all of the different aspects of content generation that exist in that cycle. And Peter, I know you're very familiar with content generation. You know, it's a complicated process, right? And sometimes I think people will start off with a journey to say, actually, can we have one tool to rule them all? And I think one of the things that Emma brought out really nicely was actually you might be looking at a toolbox or a tool belt, and it's actually trying to find the right product for the right challenge that you're trying to address. And that's the way things are probably going to work right now. But actually, if you do find the right tool for the right challenge that you're trying to address, it can actually be quite successful. But it's always working in unison with the AI. And I think that's also really the key thing that we wanted to bring across, regardless of whether you're in a healthcare setting or in a pharma setting, is how can you work successfully with the AI? And that's knowing what it does, what it doesn't do, and how to use it successfully and what to watch out for as well. So I think, you know, those are definitely the key themes that we wanted to bring across. And the final thing in terms of the day was to give people a hands-on usage around AI itself. And that's where we brought the Beacon product and really giving people the ability in that safe environment to try it out for themselves and really see that actually with the specialist AI product, it's there to help you, but it's not there to replace you. It still needs you to be able to critique the outputs and also to be able to then take that forward into a decision. So we were able to do that, I think, quite nicely because of the feedback that we got, and we had a 90% recommendation of Beacon, which I thought, great, it seems to be doing its job really well. But I think, again, just hearing the discussion around the room, I thought was fantastic as well, because people really were able to bring out what specialist AI products are doing well, what perhaps they're not doing so well at the moment, but actually how they can work with the AI. And that's also something that we wanted to leave people with, is that don't be afraid, definitely go for it, explore, really experiment and see what works for you. Now, obviously, you should say in the work environment, do that within your own company guidelines, but certainly do it, right? I think that's really the key thing, is do it, because you've seen all of these fantastic use cases in the healthcare setting and the pharma setting. Yes, absolutely go in with your eyes wide open. Absolutely do go ahead and see where you can go with this, because I do honestly believe that as we move on, we're just going to see AI pervade our lives even more, personally and professionally. So I'm going to pause.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. That was great. I did think it was very interesting, that comparison between the initial sort of NHS type environment discussion. I agree there are similarities, but it is quite a different environment to then the pharma companies with Will and Emma. I thought it was really very, very interesting. And I think everyone in the room thought it was just interesting to hear those different perspectives and so on. But there was a lot of talk in around there somewhere in that second session, where I think there was a lot of tiptoeing around actually the question of how agencies and companies and the dynamic between them is going to change. And there's quite a lot of care taken when we're talking about AI, about how, you know, humans work with AI and it doesn't take our jobs and yada 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 yada. But when there's a sort of discussion like that in the room, I think people are tiptoeing around the fact that there is going to be quite a lot of impact, and we're not quite sure what it is. And certainly, to take a simple example, the dynamics between agency and company, where the content is created, how it's managed, how it's used in different ways, etc. I find that very interesting, and I suppose, blunt question, Raks, I mean, are you nervous about how things are changing between agencies and companies? Do you see threats or opportunity or whatever?
So it's both, right? I think that's the way I look at it, Peter. But I think it is both, because, and there was a recent study, in fact, I think published last week by MIT, which I think provides some really interesting insights around that particular question that you're asking, which is, if AI is replacing those tasks in your role, which ultimately reflect the most strategic and creative parts of your role, yes, you should be looking at doing something else, because actually, when AI gets really, really good at that, the question will be, well, why do you need somebody who's doing that task? Whereas if AI is replacing something in your role, which is not the most strategic or the creative part of your role, actually what that study found was that it freed up, this is where I look at it to see it as an opportunity. It freed up that time for people to be more strategic, creative, to think of more productive and high quality ways in which they can make an impact and add value to what's actually ultimately being done. And I think Will reflected this in his talk as well, which was, is AI going to replace us? Well, who in the industry is not doing something more than 100%? We're being asked, can you do more? And typically we're responding with, no, we can't, because we just don't have the capacity to do that. Are there things that we would like to do? Yes, absolutely. But can we do them daily? And would we like, can we do them in the way that we would like? No. Can AI give us the ability to do that if it's taken away those aspects of our role, which enable us to be more strategic, to enable us to be more collaborative externally and internally, and to do more with what we're doing? Absolutely. And I think that's where within pharma, yes, that can make a big difference. That's also why I brought in, I just want to complete this as well, because I think it provides good evidence, that's also why I brought in the example on the day about the legal tech industry. And because they're about 10 years ahead of us with working with AI, and lawyers are highly skilled. And at the time AI was introduced to them, there was that same great worry. It's like, why would you need lawyers? And there was this thought that actually, gosh, it's going to lead to the extinction of lawyers doing certain things. The opposite has happened, right? So the opposite has happened, which is there are more vacancies now for lawyers, and actually their rates have gone up. And if you like, the growth in the value of that industry has gone up beyond the general economic growth rate as well. So if it is captured in the right way and for the right roles in terms of looking at how you can work with AI, absolutely, I do see it as an opportunity. I do see this content generation as an area of opportunity. So, you look at it from an agency's perspective. Yes, it may well take some of that work away, but what else can you do on top of that to add value, to continue to add value? So I think it's very much looking at it with that mindset, as well as if you're in pharma, to say, okay, what else can I do? Now, it's not to say that some roles, like I say, if it's hitting the peak of what you're doing, yes, then there may well be certain things that do fall away. But I think to the vast majority of us, and again, looking at the experience in other industries, it will probably lead to the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, my point back to that, and it was talked about in the room, was it's all very well because we all want to do the creative, interesting stuff, but a lot of us start by learning the basic grungy stuff. And if AI takes that away, where are all the junior roles going? And that was a discussion in the room, which I thought was quite interesting. Nick, bring you in, Nick. We're going to run out of time in a few minutes, guys. Nick, bring you in, and bring it back to sort of the MLR type environment that you work in. And I mean, talk a little bit about, reflect on what Raks talked about, but how is it impacting this sort of basic medico-legal review type environment? Let's talk specifically about that for a minute.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that it will impact. That there'll be, as in any new technology, there'll be people who are very quick to adopt it and people who are much slower, and there will be people who are very cautious and not want to use this technology. And the caution's understandable, but the fact is, and this I think is a learning from the sessions from the people working in healthcare, is that if you don't use this technology to improve what you do, I mean, everybody tends to focus on the negative things that can happen.
Right.
But actually, we've got to think about the benefits that come as well and weigh those risks together. And traditionally in pharma, we're not good at that. We generally work along the lines of what's in it for us in the company in doing this and what can go wrong under compliance. We need to get better at thinking about what are the benefits, not just for the company, but for patients from use of AI interventions, from the quality of materials that we produce, from the accuracy of them. And I think, that if you're missing chance to bring benefits, to do good things that you could do, then that can be said to be unethical. It comes to a point where that's unethical. So there'll be some people probably in healthcare who are so laggard with their uptake of AI to improve patient care that actually now it's through reasons of laziness or unacceptable reasons that there comes a point where you have a moral obligation to take some tech on board because of the benefits that it will bring. And we don't talk enough about that side of all sides of AI. And that's the difference between ethics and compliance, the biggest difference, if you like, when I talk about that difference. There's a tragic thing in pharma that we tend to think of the two as the same thing. They are absolutely not. Because compliance only reflects your obligation not to do bad things. It doesn't include, there is no rules saying you have to do good things.
Right.
But you can be compliant by not doing things. So if you never introduce AI, it'll be 100% compliant. but you won't have achieved good things that you could have done to benefit people, and that's unethical. So I reflect on the fact that it will enter the MLR process, and part of that will be economic drivers to do it, because it will increase the efficiency of the process and the accuracy, ultimately, I think, of review. And it's a question of how we respond to that within a medical and medical affairs community and a compliance community. But it will enter the process sooner or later. You will be using it. Now, I take reassurance in the MLR view, in the MLR space, that AI cannot fundamentally, intrinsically make a decision where humans can reasonably disagree. And there's a lot about where humans can reasonably disagree within medical legal review. It's not uncommon for companies to disagree about whether a claim's worthwhile, for signatories to disagree. Disagreement is part of the process. There are some things, that are clearly right, some things are clearly wrong, but AI cannot make a call where there is human disagreement. And the reason for that is you need a human to take accountability for whatever the final decision is. So this idea that AI is going to be introduced and sort of remove subjectivity from debates about whether a particular claim is nonsense. It's rubbish. It's not. It'll be a long time in the future before, and perhaps a very dark day when we say, right, AI, you can make decisions about whether a claim is appropriate or inappropriate, because it's a human who has to take accountability for the decision. I think people in MLR should be reassured about their job security. If they're thinking about ethics rather than simply what might be compliant. Sorry.
I suppose my question in my head as I'm listening to you talk is that sounds fine, but humans have an annoying sort of tendency to look for the easy way out and accept what a computer says. And, are we going down a slippery slope where someone is actually just going to put, a document into a system and go, is this compliant, and get an answer back that basically says yes, and then not question it? Because again, in my experience, exactly as you're saying, MLR, there's a lot of bringing the human experience and past experience and judgment to bear. But if the human being somewhere in that system just goes, well, I could just put it in that system and get an answer, and everyone else goes, it's easier just to sort of accept it, and then it moves forward, is that a danger? Do you see that as a real danger, or do you think I'm over worrying about that aspect of human behavior?
Yeah, I think that's a real danger, because it could happen. You could see, that with advancements in AI, that I take your point that it might say it scored this claim and it's come out with a mark of this rather than that. Therefore, we're going to say it's okay. And everybody down that stamp. But what if I, as a signatory or a medic within it, don't agree with that? And I'm allowed that. I'm allowed not to disagree. What if I, as a representative having to make that claim, don't agree with it? That's what do we do then? I think when you hand accountability for decisions, for moral decisions, to machines, essentially, that is as I say, a massive step to take for moral decisions. It's a bit like saying, if we take the recent debate about assisted dying, well, let's put all the data into an AI system and see what it says, and then we'll go with that.
Can I offer a view on this?
I was going to say, we're going to have to wrap up in a minute, guys. But Raks, just a final reflection on that point from your point of view.
Yeah, so I mean, so I think certainly the way that we've developed, I can only talk about Beacon, right? It's the way that we've developed Beacon, right? And that is really to ultimately place the user in control. And one thing which I thought was interesting to hear Will say on the day about the reason why he's introducing Beacon into Roche is actually to improve quality. And one of the things he saw with Beacon was that you get this transparency that you don't get with human reviews with regards to why Beacon is suggesting what it's suggesting. And I think it does the opposite. I think it holds us more to account with regards to our decisions than if you have, say, for example, your standard manual review. Because how many times do you see job bags go through Viva and you have this and you just change this? It's like, well, why do I need to change this? What's the reason behind it? And if I disagree with you as the originator, what's the cause for me to be able to do that? AI gives you, and certainly Beacon gives you, the ability to really transparently look through the reasons behind that and actually to hold each other to account around that. So I completely agree that it should always be the user in control, but I think it will lead to the opposite, which is I think it will lead to increased quality of output and actually hold us to account more for our decisions. And actually AI will help us to do that. So that's the way that we've been looking to build with Beacon, is really to be able to help people rather than to replace folk. And like I say, to almost sort of say that, if you get to that lazy stage to say, well, yes, this is what because I would say that's an inherent behavior where it's not just the AI. It's not just the AI that you're relying on to do that. It may well be your favorite reviewer, where you can say, "Yeah, do you know what? I trust them. I'm just going to go with this." So I don't think AI necessarily changes that. I think if anything, it's the opposite. It will shine a light on you making your decisions.
Okay, fair point. So look, we, as usual, I want to just whisker on, and we can't. But just to sort of wrap this up, I mean, it was a great meeting, and honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. So and we've covered it interestingly today. But simple question. Start with you, Raks. Optimistic, pessimistic about the future and the impact of AI in this area?
My bias will take over here. I am optimistic, right? Because I've been working with it for over 3 years. I definitely see the benefits of being able to work alongside AI, so long as we maintain that control over what AI does. Now, who knows what the future is going to hold and how this is going to play out in a decade's time. But I feel hopeful about what we can do and what more we can do as well. Again, if we look at ultimately, are we doing this to ultimately help companies, help healthcare professionals improve patient outcomes? Yes, if that's the case, then absolutely feel optimistic about that.
Okay, optimistic. Nick, final word to you. Optimistic or pessimistic?
Yeah, I'm optimistic, but it needs guardrails, needs caution. In the MLR process, as an example, I think I'm optimistic it will improve the process, but the humans have to make the call. In the longer term, I'm cautious. I think we have to be on our guard. We can't just let these things free wheel, is my view. And I do worry that sometimes people just say, "Oh, it's all, everybody's job will be fine. We'll just have more jobs." I'm not sure. In certain areas, there is less recruitment. I don't think we can stop that. We can't put the genie back in the box. That can't. But it's important that people think about their future and how they adapt, and roles that AI will have difficulty ever replacing. And that, if people think about that, we might find actually that AI improves the human experience, because we find jobs that are actually really about human interaction, and that's ultimately a positive thing.
Okay, let's end on these optimistic notes. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'll state the obvious, that you're very happy for people to contact you. LinkedIn is an easy way of doing so, if they want to reach out and talk more about these topics or what you do and so on. Thank you so much. A little plug for myself, as it were. Reach out to me, NetworkPharma TV. We've got hundreds and hundreds of videos now. Lots of opinions being expressed and discussed about all matters around the pharma and biomedical industry. So come along and have a look. But Nick, Raks, thank you very much. Quick wave and we'll say goodbye. Thank you very much.